Chinese New Gates and Thresholds. Naihe Bridge, the Mirror Platform, and the Last Cup. In Chinese popular and religious imagination, the moment of passing is staged like a short, sharp theater piece. First a last breath, then a bridge, then a mirror, then a bow, and the whole sequence performs what the living cannot. It prepares the soul to leave memory behind and face its reckoning. The chief images to hold are the Naihe Qiao, Bridge of Forgetting, the Ye Qing Tai, the Mirror Platform or Mirror of Retribution, and Meng Po, with a 5-flavored soup or tea. Each a distinct liminal technology that together make death into a civilized, legible transition. The Naihe Bridge is the theatrical crossing. Folk accounts and temple lore describe a bridge spanning the river between the world of the living and the courts below. In some variants, it is a rainbow, in others, a narrow plank, and in many, the crossing itself tests a soul's balance of deeds. As in many Asian afterlife imaginaries, the bridge is both literal and symbolic. It is the last public moment before the soul is registered in Yudu, the nether capital, and presented for judgment. The mirror platform, Ye Jing Tai, thus the revealing. In court mythology, a soul is made to stand before a great mirror that lays out a lie's record, not as argument, but as stark evidence. The mirror is called the mirror of retribution or the mirror of past lives. It shows deeds, faces, and the truth the soul has tried to avoid. The visual effect is immediate and savage. The hero sees their own story reflected back, and the judges no longer need to argue. Mengbo's bow ends this scene of memory. Before reincarnation, the dead meet Mengbo, the Lady of Oblivion, who ladles the 5-flavored soup or tea that wipes away the last ties to former births, so rebirth can proceed unburdened. The Bruce rule is practical. It prevents the carryover of memories that would obstruct karmic processes and social continuity. In narrative terms, this is both mercy and administrative neatness. The soul is reset and thus available for a new ledger to be opened. Transit and Psychopomps. Oxhead, Horseface, Heibai, Wuchang, and the citymagistrates. Transit in Chinese Diyu is equal parts grotesque carnival and municipal arrest. Your life ends, and then a very particular bureaucracy turns up at your bedside. The first step is rarely a polite knock. It's a pair of monstrous escorts who take the soul by the collar, a couple of black and white constables who read out your dockets, and then a procession into Yudu, the nether capital, where magistrates and registers do the paperwork. This is underworld logistics, not metaphysical guesswork. Oxhead and Horseface are the classical gay team, half man, half beast. They are the capture unit who fetch the newly dead and hold them off for processing. Folktales and devotional prints make them equal parts terrifying, and efficient. Think grim porters with tridents, not phantom or psychopomps. Their job is simple: collect a soul, prevent escape, and deliver it to the first desk in the bureaucracy. Then come the Heibai Wuchang, the black and white impermanence pair, less monstrous in iconography and more oddly human. They act as constables and case officers, one black, one white. They balance threat with a strange folkloric compassion. In temples, they are also protective deities. In narrative, they can be either chastening or oddly helpful, depending on how your moral ledger reads. They are the ones who sometimes take names, sometimes take bribes, metaphorically speaking, of course. And they show why Chinese popular religion blends legal process and local piety. All of these funnels into Yuru and the 10 magistrates, the underworld's court complex. The soul is presented before a sequence of judges, the 10 kings, or in older variant or schemes, through a graded set of courts or 18 levels. Each court specializes in a type of case. Punishments are often graphic and specifically tailored. A visual catalogue of retribution you see in temple murals, folk prints, and places like Heibai Villa. Very few traditions make morality look so juridical and theatrical at once. Now, crucially, the transit is not purely deterministic. City god cults, family petitions, and ritual intercession matter. The living can and do petition local Chenghuan offices, make offerings, or perform rites to alter a relative's docket. Paper money petitions, temple rites, are the civic religious equivalent of filing an appeal. That social dimension is why the underworld is as much a civic institution as a cosmic one. It keeps families and local orders invested in moral maintenance. Court and Inhabitants, 10 courts, 18 levels, and a bureaucratic hellscape. The U is China's underworld courthouse. Less a single fiery pit, and more a sprawling judicial complex, where moral paperwork is read aloud, penalties are pronounced, and the living can sometimes file an appeal. Popular imagination pictures a sequence of courts or levels, commonly the 10 courts of hell, or, in other tellings, the 18 levels, each specializing in particular kinds of offenses and staffed by judges, clerks, and executioners. These judicial layers make morality look suspiciously like municipal governance, very detailed, occasionally grisly, and embarrassingly bureaucratic. Beginning with the 10 kings and the core sequence. In many common tellings, the dead are hauled before a procession of judges, the 10 kings, or Yan Wang, which is a shortened form and a commonly used title for the deity, or Yan Luo Wang, which is a more complete transliteration of the Sanskrit Yamaraja. Anyway, each responsible for a slice of deliberation and punishments. The scripture on the 10 kings, later popularized in folk Buddhism and temple art and temple displays, city god halls, shrine murals, and places such as Singapore's Heibai Villa, familiarized people with a catalogue of courts and a punitive tableau. the 10-chord model turned moral education into visual theater. It's practical catechism disguised as a prosecutorial pageant. Now, 18 levels and the catalogue of punishments. You see, another widespread scheme is the 18 levels of hell, time period simplification of many earlier lists, where each level corresponds to particular tortures for specific sins, being salt, boiled, crushed, forced to climb spikes, or otherwise remade into cautionary spectacle. Keep in mind, that is most likely more for keeping people at bay, so don't worry about that too much. Folk prints, theatrical performances, and shrine murals popularize these images as moral pedagogy. Do wrong and you get a very particular and visually memorable consequence. And keep in mind, rebirth is a thing in Chinese mythology. The gruesome specificity is meant less to titillate and more to instruct. Moral conduct matters because the cosmic codes are painstakingly literal. Yudu registers and the administrative heart of Diyu. All of this plays out in Yudu, the nether capital, imagined like a dark mirror of an earthly city, full of offices, magistrates, and courtyards. Souls are registered, files opened, judgments issued, and often punishments exacted in stage chambers. The city metaphor matters. It gives the underworld the same civic texture as the human polity, with magistrates to petition, clerks to bribe, and public temples where living kin try to influence outcomes by offerings and merit transfer. And lastly, inhabitants and function, judges, executioners, and intercessors. The cast is broad. Oxhead and Horseface deliver, the Heibai Wuchang supervise transfer, the 10 kings preside, lesser functionaries carry out sentences, and bodhisattvas such as Kshikarpa in Mahayana contexts function as powerful intercessors who can mitigate sentences. Crucially, the living remain implicate. Petitions to city god temples, burning of paper offerings, merit-making rituals, and recitations are all believed to influence the relative stockets. That social permeability means the U is less final courtroom than contested administrative process. Families and local cults remain invested actors. Judgment, reward, and cultural function. Recount, punish, remit, remember. The Chinese underworld performing arts ends not with omnipotent rev, but with paperwork, pedagogy, and a surprisingly social afterlife economy. And these are displayed, sentences pronounced, and then, crucially, the living are invited to intervene. The system is critical and remedial rather than purely punitive. Its instruments, mirrors, magistrates, petitions, and offerings keep the moral order legible and the community responsible for its deeds, beginning with judgment as public accounting. You see, when a soul arrives in Yudu, it faces its ledger. The mural platform lays the life bare, clerks open registers, and judges in successive courts pronounce proportional outcomes. And this is a legal theater. The emphasis is on evidence and fit penalty or remediation, rather than on arbitrary damnation. The 10 courts, or 18 levels variant, provide a staged, cumulative adjudication that turns moral teaching into very specific, memorable imagery. Next, punishment, pedagogy, and temporality. The punishments depicted in the Yu are often graphic, in particular the 18 levels catalog gruesome tableau, but classical and popular text usually frame them as corrective and time-bound. Souls commonly undergo purgation appropriate to their misdeeds and are then reborn. Only the gravest, Avicii-like states, borrowed from Buddhist influence, approach permanent exclusion in some narratives. The theatrical cruelty, in short, functions as moral pedagogy. It teaches the living through vivid cautionary imagery. Remission and the civic role of the living. A defining feature of Chinese practice is permeability. The living can petition, intercede, and materially affect a relative's docket. Offerings, joss paper, hood, merit-making donations, ritual chanting, and petitions at Chengwang, the city god, shrines are understood as real administrative acts. They are the ancient equivalent of filing an appeal, making amends, or paying a fine on behalf of the accused. This socialized afterlife ties filial piety and communal responsibility into the very mechanics of judgments. Religious pluralism and saviours, Chitikapa and local cults. Because Chinese religion is plural, Buddhist and Taoist elements intermix with native popular practices. Bodhisattvas such as Chitikapa and Wuchang appear as powerful intercessors in Mahayana-influenced communities, promising to rescue beings from suffering and to shorten terms in the Yu. Taoist rites and local city god offices supply complementary bureaucratic tools. This religious ecology gives families multiple practical channels to seek mercy for the dead. And lastly, cultural function, social discipline, moral pedagogy, and visual cathesis. They use vivid courtroom dramas, perform several civic tasks. They inculcate filial piety, the living care of ancestors, stabilize local moral norms, avoid the sins whose punishments are the most graphic, and sustain a ritual economy, temples, shrines, and ritual specialists. The visual culture, murals, woodcuts, and places like Harvilla turns these doctrines into memorable moral education for a broad public. In short, the Yu is as much about keeping society functioning as it is about deciding individual fates. So, if you like tidy audits, you will find the Yu reassuring. Even the afterlife has a complaint desk, and abilities who are willing to stand in line.